Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining our weekly podcast. I'm Robin Lewis, founder and CEO of the Robin Report, and along with our chief strategist, Shelley Kohan, also a consultant at large and a professor at FIT and Syracuse University. So we welcome you to our conversation on the topic today of from blue collar to new collar. Well, you'll understand very quickly what that means. So, Shelley, we have discussed in our past podcasts the great resignation, the massive numbers of workers who just walked off their jobs, or what some people call the big I quit.
I quit, yep.
Yeah. So for a variety of reasons, by the way, some were due to the pandemic after being shut down for a year. Some of them just wanted to work from home. Others just fed up and with their jobs and or looking for more rewarding work or for a job that they just might like better, or to be an entrepreneur. Right. And on and on and on. There's a lot of entrepreneurs today, more so than are ever going to make it. But anyway, so this also left businesses, of course, and especially retailers, kind of holding the bag, desperately needing to fill jobs, actually across the entire service industries, hospitality, restaurants, so forth and so on. And I think you said, and I'm sure you said this a couple of times back, that there are like 1.1 million openings in retail alone.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and 11 million openings across the economy. And there are only about 5 million people looking for jobs. Anyway, so all of this in itself is creating new paradigms, okay? A huge shift, having unique first-time structural changes in our economy. But now, and this is what we're on to today, there's a new and I think kind of an astounding shift, and it was uncovered by Oliver Wyman, who's a management consulting firm. And he surveyed 80,000 workers worldwide between August 2020 and March 2022. And what his survey revealed is that more Americans are making the leap from blue-collar jobs and hourly work to quote-unquote new-collar roles, essentially trading up in terms of jobs. Anyway, and these new roles often involve tech skills and come with better pay and work schedules and conditions. And more than a tenth of Americans in low-paying roles in warehouses, manufacturing, hospitality, and other hourly positions made such a switch during the past 2 years. Many of the new jobs are in software and information technology, as well as tech-related roles in logistics, finance, healthcare. I mean, it's amazing, Shelley, and think about it. I mean, companies have struggled to hire all the talent they need. So many have dropped qualifications like prior work experience or a 4-year college degree. So they've dropped those qualifications necessary. Anyway, also the percentage of retirees in the U.S. population has climbed sharply over the past decade and ticked even higher in the COVID-19 era, with millions of baby boomers leaving the workforce. Declining immigration has also added to shortages. Right. Yeah, and particularly in technology, healthcare, and other fields that really depend heavily on foreign-born workers. Shelley, I think there is something bigger here. I think there's something bigger going on. I don't think this is another one-off, and that somehow things will come back to the normal we used to know. I really think all the macro stuff that's been going on, that I think there really will be a new and kind of unknown normal at this time. And I think this may be a huge cultural shift, another shift that I think will stick.
Well, Robin, we touched on the economic phenomena of inflation and how higher prices are really not transitory, but actually being a fundamental jump in prices. We've seen that over the past year for sure. And those prices essentially are never coming back down. And part of that is because of the big demographic shift that you just mentioned. Older people leaving the workforce, not enough young people to take their place, thus not enough supply to meet demand. So this was that famous economist Charles Goodhart's thesis in the book that he wrote, The Great Demographic Reversal.
Yep.
But what this whole blue to new collar movement of young people leaving these blue collar jobs for the lure of higher level paying jobs, even without college degrees, and they're actually learning on the job, not only exasperates Goodhart's thesis, but it also tips a majority of those 11 million open jobs to the vast service industry. And of course, that includes retail in a big way.
Yeah, Shelley, exactly. And, you know, I pulled out a good example of what we're talking about here. And this is just one person and one example, but it's really kind of a good one. This guy named Alexis Ayala is 27 years old, and he enjoyed a retail sales job. And this was at a cell phone shop in San Francisco, and before the pandemic. Anyway, he had immigrated from Mexico as a toddler, and like his parents, he did not go to college. So when COVID-19 broke out, it kind of dried up his commissions for the sales that he was doing. And then he heard about a position at a software maker that came with a promise of on-the-job training. He didn't have to have any tech experience, but his friend, who already worked there, assured him that they were looking for people who could learn on the job. Anyway, so once he was hired, he learned the technology, plus skills like making PowerPoint presentations. Anyway, so he was moving up in the tasks and skills that were needed. So he was promoted to account executive. Wow. And now he makes 6 figures selling software to account executives, and now makes 6 figures, selling that software. Well beyond, by the way, his $80,000 he made in his last year or best year of retail sales. And of course, you know, there are many other examples, but I thought that was a good one.
No, that's the perfect example. And according to that Wyman poll, the workers who made the new collar kind of switch skews about 67% male and 77% between ages 25 and 44. 67% live in cities, and 70% describe themselves as optimistic about their career prospects. So, Robin, you had mentioned that this is a huge cultural shift and one that may stick. And when you think about the millennial and Gen Z, the mindset about work and careers, you know, unlike us when we were growing up, you know, before big tech, we were expected to go to college. In most cases, we pursued getting a job with a big company, climbing the corporate ladder, hopefully to reach the C-suite after many, many years of, you know, hard work. But, you know, today the younger generation is more interested in lifestyle and what type of work will support and fit into their lifestyle. And they're more entrepreneurial, for sure.
Yeah. Let me jump in here, Shelley. To that point, as you know, our intern for this summer is majoring in entrepreneurship at Elon University in North Carolina. I mean, so there you go. I never heard of getting a degree in entrepreneurship. Maybe they were around, but not when I was going to school. Anyway, it's amazing. And just think of the incredible number of internet entrepreneurs that today are popping up, you know, all over the place.
It's so true. And today's young mindset is totally different about life's education and career paths. So men are starting their own companies even before they leave college, or they decided that they actually want to work for themselves. They don't want to work for this, big company. So according to Opportunity at Work, as many as 32 million Americans lack a four-year college degree, but have the skills or experience to parlay into higher income paying jobs. The key is spending the time and dollars on training and spotting potential applicants who lack traditional criteria.
Yeah. So Shelley, let's focus a little bit more on retail. How are they going to lure these young workers? And more importantly, how are they going to keep them from leaving? I mean, many of the boring and or low paying jobs in retail, how are they going to keep them from leaving? For higher paying and more energizing and fun jobs. I mean, I think you said at one point there's something like a 70% turnover in the retail industry.
Yeah, I mean, 70% is being very conservative in the number.
Wow, amazing.
But yeah, it's tremendously high. And I think the pandemic has really created this unusual circumstance of workers who are just fed up with hard work, scheduling that was inconsistent across weekends, and customers screaming at them. And mostly, these customers are angry at these retail workers and restaurant workers too for things that are out of their control, like out of stocks, or shortages of workers, so longer wait times or reduced hours. A lot of businesses have reduced their hours. So the retail industry, has realized that if it wants to keep workers engaged and employed, it has to change its employment practices for sure.
For sure. Well, we went from employing workers for lifetime jobs in the 50s and 60s to this new age of hiring more part-time workers, which, in my opinion, is really the beginning of the end, I think. Anyway, you have all of these part-time workers who traditionally do not receive overtime pay and benefits, working in the service industry particularly. And while it worked that way for a few decades, now we are seeing this reversal over the past 5 years, offering more benefits, higher wages. And as we move into 2022 and 2023, the need for retailers to become employers of choice, higher wages, more benefits, better schedules, and more and more. But do you think it is too late?
Well, the job opening rates back in February of 2021 was 5.2%. We've seen that number increase to 7% this past February. And retail trade in particular went from 5.3 to 6.3, hence that million job openings, or over 9% of total open jobs are in retail. And accommodations and food services went from 6.7% to 10.2% in February of this year. So again, another, industry that's really plagued by these massive job openings. And the quit rates for all jobs went from 2.3% last year to 2.9%, a slight increase, but retail was higher, went from 3.6% quit rate to 4.9 in 1 year. And accommodations and food services went from 5.2 to 6% within 1 year. So in February, there was many workers hired. So there were workers hired was just over 1 million, but there were also 950,000 job quits. So we're still, we've hired as many people as have quit in in February.
Well, Shelley, you follow the numbers, and they're really frightening when you think about them. And of course, all of this doesn't even touch upon the risks of workers, right? And particularly in service industries, who these workers are in touching distance of customers, right? Therefore, they have higher exposure to risks like, getting COVID and its many variants, or abusive customers, I mean, just think about these flight attendants who've been attacked by these anti-maskers.
It's
I mean,
terrible.
so that's what happens on the front line, right? When you're in touching distance of the customer. Anyway, the retail industry has not really addressed its long overdue wage issues, benefits, working schedules, and safe work environments. The labor shortage, coupled with the many different impacts of the pandemic, have really raised a ton of challenges for retailers. And one inherent problem is if there are few to no workers in entry-level jobs, how does this impact the future of retail in terms of succession planning? Many of today's senior executives, started out back when in retail in part-time jobs, in sales, in warehousing, stock keeping. Anyway, it begs the question, where will future retail executives be coming from? And particularly since, as we've been talking about, young workers simply leaving the types of boring entry-level positions.
Well, also, in addition to the idea of where's the future of retail coming from, if not from the trenches, that should be a whole different podcast and article, is this idea of, will consumers pay more for goods and services to provide a better economic solution for workers? So in other words, if you pay higher wages and you provide more benefits and you increase the safety measures, that operating expense obviously will rise. And Robin, you and I have been talking about rising prices for the past year. And in the consumer price index that just came out 2 days ago, it showed price increases year for the last 12 months at 8.5%.
Yep.
And that's the largest increase in over 40 years. So you have this higher cost of goods, you have these higher operating expenses. So this is going to lead to one of two outcomes. Retail businesses are going to go bankrupt because they can't afford all this added expense, or consumers are going to have to start paying higher prices. And if you add in the union participation in retail trade, we know when retail organizations have unions, the cost of employment is significantly higher. You add that on a wider scale as we see more and more of these retailers unionizing, that will certainly add to the operating expense as well.
Yep. If retail jobs can better demonstrate, a path to management or supervisory roles, there may be higher interest among the younger generations. But these jobs have to come with better work-life balance, as we talked about, lifestyle, and a deeper commitment from companies to the employees' well-being as well.
Well, you had mentioned something, Robin, the training is something that's so important, and training is something a lot of retail companies have actually rolled back or cut out. And you look at the technology companies, like your example that you had mentioned earlier, the technology companies are smart. They're actually creating this path that easily trains entry-level employees on the capabilities of technology. So entry-level employees working for a tech company, they don't need to know how to write code, right? Or have these highly technical skills. They can be trained on how to use the technology. So retail companies should understand that employees who want to learn, they want to improve their skills and be given more opportunities, also in a quicker timetable than what has done in the past. So that career path of working many, many years to move up the ladder, that ladder has lost many rungs, so to speak. So will retail workers be trading over to these newfound careers in technology where training and scheduling, just your daily schedule, and quicker advancements? Are they going to be moving over when those, training schedules and quicker advancement prevails?
Yeah. Shelley, Macy's used to have a very, professional training program. I can't remember the years there, but, and for some reason they don't have that. And I think the reason for it is that that's another big cost center. And but those were the years also where some of the retail giants of the last generation, like Marvin Traub, um, I think Alan Questrom, they were coming out of Harvard and Boston College and so forth, and they were going into retail careers because during those years in the 50s and 60s, it was a great profession and there's a lot of money being made. But
yeah, and Robin,
yeah.
it's funny you mentioned that. I know you don't know this about me, but I actually went through the Federated Leadership Program.
You
I'm
did.
one of the people that went through that program, and it's one of the best programs
Yes.
that I've ever been through. It was called the Federated Leadership Institute.
Yeah, there you go. You were there. Yeah, and I think that some of that should come back. And I guess, perhaps the synergy created by the, retail meets tech, maybe that will help. Walmart, with its massive tech investments over the years, they said in March that they plan to hire more than 5,000 tech workers. And they are opening tech hubs in Atlanta and Toronto. And more retail companies are investing in technology. And of course, this will lead to hiring more tech workers. And this will continue. So this will beg the question, Shelley, will this attract and keep more workers? And will it change the retail employment landscape? But Shelley, it's not just about new tech jobs either. I mean, retailers need to find ways to build great benefits for their workers. I mean, Walmart, for example, is giving Walmart Plus to all of their workers for free.
It's a huge benefit. Huge.
I know. They have like 1 million plus employees. And no, I guess it's just for the United States. But I think regular people, not Walmart workers, pay, I believe, for Walmart Plus, I believe it's around $90 a year. I may be wrong on that. But that's a great benefit. So more stuff like that. And, there are an array of retailers today that are offering many different kinds of benefits, flexible hours, student loans. I mean, Lowe's, I read today, is going to pay for a lot of their workers to go to college. And I remember when I was working for VF Corporation back in the 80s, if you were an executive you qualified, they would pay for your MBA. Anyway,
Wow.
So these are things that retailers should be thinking of. And Shelley, the other aspect we did not even cover today is the desire for many of today's workers to be remote.
Right.
I mean, many employees do not want to work full time anymore or in an office. I mean, they like the balance of a hybrid working model, which most of them went through during the pandemic. But on the other hand, this work from home idea is not something that is conducive to retail store workers that need to operate stores. And you can't exceed customers' expectations if you're not there to interact with them. So that's a big challenge for retail. But one thing we do know, Shelley, in closing here, is that one of retail's biggest challenges heading into the future is how do they keep their young workers not only happy in their jobs, but keeping them really ecstatic.
Yeah, that's true, Robin. Employer of choice is easier said than done, for sure.
Yeah.
For our listeners, you can find more of our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Buzzsprout.com, and therobinreport.com. And look for us on YouTube, where we are now broadcasting our podcast as well. And please follow us on social media, link in with us, and follow us on Twitter for the latest thoughts about the industry.
And I want to thank all of you again. Shelley, thank you again. And Every week I ask people to think about topics they would like us to cover. And if you have a topic you would like us to cover, send me an email, robin@therobinreport.com. And thanks again.